Good evening. You're on the smoking section, and my name is Stephen Helfer. If you don't know it now, of course, you could read it up on the introductory panel that we had. And we're on every week at the same time, same place, to discuss tobacco issues. And today I had a tooth pulled, and I was, of course, very impressed by how professional the field of dentistry can be, although I was a little bit, I think they take a few too many x-rays, and I kind of acquiesced and felt a little unhappy about acquiescing because I think it was a bit redundant, and I'm a little bit leery about just how many x-rays one should have. But what's done is done, and there's no sense in crying over spilt milk. But I was told, given a list of things that I should and should not do for the next couple of days. And of course, not surprisingly, one of those things is I shouldn't smoke for 48 hours. Which, of course, for most people who smoke, to go 48 hours without a cigarette is not comfortable, it's not enjoyable. There's no danger of me throwing a fit or writhing on the floor or having a seizure or becoming violent like there is with many drugs. And I don't consider tobacco and nicotine a drug any more than I consider chamomile tea a drug, or water, for example, a drug. But anyway, so I wonder how many people really follow that. And one thing I feel very certain about, and that is that it is based on no scientific evidence whatsoever. Somebody did some study somewhere which seemed to indicate those people who smoked, maybe their teeth didn't heal as quickly as those people. I mean, there are just so many confounding factors involved with that, that the science, if there is any science, is laughable. And I guess I should have really asked the dentist, who was a female dentist and a Chinese person, but I'm sure she doesn't have any knowledge of why this is written down. This is written down by some kind of large dentistry group, and just throw in "don't smoke for 48 hours," blah blah blah. And of course I went right out and had a cigarette immediately after the appointment and after the extraction, because of course that's what makes me feel good. And so far I haven't had to take any painkillers. I may at some point have to take some ibuprofen, and but also tobacco is itself a mild analgesic. It does ease pain somewhat, not just psychic pain, but physical pain. Helps you endure pain, not like oxycodone will, but like a plant or herb will. And so therefore I think my smoking is quite fine. I have I'm sure that it will in no way affect the healing of my gum. And I think, throwing these kinds of things around, that, these kinds of recommendations, which again I believe are based on no scientific evidence, it's kind of irresponsible, because it does make people who smoke go through unnecessary, I presume anybody who smokes will light up a cigarette immediately afterwards, but it makes them feel guilty or whatever. But then again, I suppose to some degree it's, self-protection for the dentist, because if the person smoked and if the doesn't heal, having nothing to do with the smoking, you can always say, oh, well, it's because you smoked. And most smokers tend to be very credulous and believe so much of the anti-smoking propaganda that they won't question it and will just say it's my fault that it didn't heal. But anyway, I had a very good dentist, and she extracted the tooth with very little pain and very quickly, and I had a toothache, and now it's gone, and so I feel good. Well, some good developments and some bad developments, like in any war, and one thing is that the city of Providence, which our Facebook page has been covering, or at least going to articles, has recently banned smoking in the downtown area. And ostensibly the reason is to protect people from secondhand smoke, although the evidence that secondhand smoke harms anybody is, again, like the evidence that smoking could cause my mouth not to heal quickly, I think is based, well, there's no question about the outside smoking bans. They're just based on no good evidence. But even though the city council did this, I think it was very, very courageous of the mayor of the city, Jorge Florza, who vetoed the bill at one point, but his veto was overridden by the rest of the council. And according to the mayor, he said really the true target of the ban is our homeless people. And he says that the ban it goes further to criminalize poverty. And, I was just thinking of that on the way over here today, because there's a small park in Cambridge that I passed by, a very small park, which is right next to a group home. And there's a woman who lives in this group home who I see on the street very often. And this woman, at least I believe, and I'm fairly familiar with schizophrenia, having had a friend who had schizophrenia for many years. And she's very schizophrenic, and she uses this park, this small park, to sit and relax and smoke, because she smokes constantly. And, I think that restricting smoking from parks, such as what Boston and New York have done, is really an attack on homeless people and on people with severe mental illness who have very few resources for recreation. Few of them have houses in Martha's Vineyard they can go to, or they don't usually take 2-week vacations to visit the Galapagos Islands and all of those places. So for poor people and people with mental disabilities, and those are very, very, many people in this country with mental disabilities are impoverished. These public parks are very, very important for them, for their mental health, and for their recreation. And so for the city council in Providence to do this, or for the New York, is extremely unethical public policy, because especially when you put it into the under the aegis of public health, because of course Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, said the first thing is do no harm. So you don't harm a selection of the public for some other public health goal. Well, it looks like I have a phone call. Let's hear who we got. Good evening, you're on the smoking section.
Hello.
Hello, you're on the smoking section.
Hello.
Hello.
I can't hear you. I'll call back.
Okay. let's see. Well, I'm very happy to take a call on this. But another very heartening development in terms of the Providence ban is that the ACLU has finally gotten involved in this issue. And a gentleman named Steve Brown mentioned that, quote, "Our concern is this is really an ordinance not about public health, but about kicking people out of Kennedy Plaza for who they are." Let's see if this will work this time. You're on the smoking section. I can hear you. So if you have a question and you'd like to address it to me, I would be more than happy, a question or a comment, I'd be more than happy to entertain it.
hear you.
Can you hear me?
Hello?
I can hear you perfectly. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hello? Steve?
Yes. Is this Jim?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's my phone. I don't know. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Huh?
I guess you can't hear me.
Right.
Say something. Just make a comment.
Steve, do you hear me?
Well, I hear Jim perfectly, but evidently Jim doesn't hear me, so perhaps his phone is a problem, or perhaps CCTV's phone is a problem, and unfortunately I will just have to be able to talk to the authorities here at CCTV and see if we can get working next time. But anyway, I think it's really wonderful that the ACLU is getting involved in this, and I think it's becoming very apparent to more and more people how much the war on smoking is really, or to some extent, overlaps the needs of poor and mentally disabled people. And of course, that's what our city council took into account when they modified to a large degree their proposed smoking ban in parks. And again, when I see this woman whom I see very regularly, I think it's really nice that she does have that opportunity to use the parks in that way. Okay, I think I'm going to do a smoker of the week. That's always a very exciting part of the show. Let's see if I can get it going here. Always requires a great deal of technical skill. And here we go. And I'm going to turn off the graphics for a moment because our phone isn't working anyway. Now this is a photo of a famous artist who used the name Balthus. And I think he was Swiss. And his real name was Balthazar Klosowski. And this is a photo of him with his wife, evidently Japanese and much younger, at the age of 88. And he was written up in the New York Times, I can't remember, in 1996, but they mentioned that he was a chain smoker and that he constantly kept a cigarette in his mouth even when he was talking to you, which is of course a great habit. I wish I could develop that skill, without the smoke getting in my eyes. And he asked the reporter, if the reporter, I guess he was going to try to offer the reporter a cigarette, but of course, particularly a reporter for the New York Times would, most likely not be a smoker. And then he said, "No, of course not, you're American." This was in 1996, so this was 21 years ago, and this was before the anti-smoking programs had begun to infect Europe as much as here. And in a book that was written called Daily Rituals, How Artists Work, written by a person named Mason Curry in 2013, it's a book about many artists, and they quoted Balthus, whose given name was Balthazar Klosowski, as saying, "I always painted while I smoked. I intuitively understood that smoking doubled my faculty of concentration, allowing me to be entirely within the canvas." So as you see, like, as I've talked about how so many writers and so many philosophers, particularly in the 20th century, found that smoking really helped them concentrate, write, helped them commune with their muse. And this was certainly the case with Balthus, and he was also able to recognize this and really not only unapologetically smoke, but understand how important smoking was to his métier, and of course that was art. Now his wife, after Balthus died, and she was an artist in her own right, I guess she made ceramics and stuff, and evidently Balthus was very fond of cats, and so she started to make these smoking cats that I don't know if she sold a lot of them or what, but Balthus was a well-known artist, Swiss, I think, even though his name sounds Polish, and this is the smoking cats because he really, really enjoyed cats, among other things, and she wanted to do something in his memory, and he died at the age of 92, so evidently chain smokers can live to be 92 or 100 and all of those advanced stages. So this idea that tobacco is lethal, I think, is very much exaggerated. Now, yesterday I was down at the State House because there are a couple of bills there which will affect tobacco taxes, and there were a lot of electronic cigarette enthusiasts there, and of course our good friend Jeffrey Yelenizian from Brennan's Tobacco Shop, and I was there to represent Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights, and I was very happy I went. It's always very interesting for me to see how these public hearings go, and I think you know, for us at Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights, our challenge is not legislators and politicians or the media or even anti-smoking groups. You know, it's not, you know, and this is where I differ from my good friend Paul Neff, it's not, you know, that the media automatically slants the narrative, or that the anti-smoking groups are so nefarious, or that politicians are so corrupt, let's say. It is basically that we have yet to organize and to motivate enough smokers to make their voices heard, and we haven't educated enough smokers to know how much of the anti-smoking pseudoscience is in the fact pseudoscience. So I think this is what we have to work at, and I think some people are doing it via the internet, educating people via the internet, and I think Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights is doing a small but very important part in this respect. But evidently, Senate Bill 1497 proposes to raise the taxes on cigars from 40% to 120%. I mean, that just sounds incredible. And this is the state taxes on cigars, and cigars are already highly taxed by the state law, and they're also got a federal tax on them. And then it says to raise the tax on smoking tobacco from 40% to 130%. And I guess what that is roll your own tobacco and pipe tobacco. Now, I haven't looked at it, but I assume it's pipe tobacco also, because, you know, a lot of retailers who are selling loose tobacco are selling what's called pipe tobacco, but it's really for rolling cigarettes. And then they raise the tax on smokeless tobacco from 210% to 230%. So those are just incredible tax hikes. And then, of course, even after you put that tax on it, then you put a sales tax on it. So it's just a predatory tax that is, to me, unconscionable, and that hits the poorest people in the state. We'll see. I mean, this gives us something to organize around, something to fight. Now, it's interesting because this bill, which is proposed by a senator, a Democratic senator, is called the Fairness Bill, Fairness Taxation Bill. And the way it's fair is, you know, because people who smoke conventional cigarettes pay X amount of tax, it's unfair not to tax roll your own people to the same degree. So in other words, we're overtaxing conventional cigarettes, and to make it more fair, now we're going to tax roll your own tobacco as predatorily as we do conventional tobacco. That's how we make things fair. That's like saying, to me, that's like saying, well, you know, if you're going to hang one person and then the other person, you know, you're going to hang the other person to make it fairer, you know, like that doesn't make things fairer just because you spread the pain around. You know, if you get hanged simply because they hang your neighbor doesn't make it more equitable in any real sense of the word. But of course, a lot of bills are named after, I think it's Senator Chang Diaz, who is proposing this bill, because she wants to introduce fairness by raising taxes on what are called OTP, other tobacco products other than conventional cigarettes. And that makes things fair. So, in other words, we'll not only prey on conventional cigarette smokers, but prey on the others, and that makes it fair. Well, this is something we can organize about, and of course, if we could get a good number of people to attend these hearings, these taxes wouldn't have a chance of passing. And that's what we're going to work for, and we'll see what happens. I'm also hopeful that Governor Baker and Speaker DeLeo are not really enthusiastic about raising taxes in Massachusetts. I think, so I'm hopeful there. And again, this is just, I shouldn't say this is a committee. This has not gone to, let's say, this is not, I don't think this is something that we have to worry about as imminently coming up. And the other bill would tax electronic electronic e-juice, but one thing about the other bill is that it would put a maximum of 50 cents tax on a cigar. I don't understand it, but Jeffrey Alanesian was down there and he was really lobbying for it. And if it passes, it would really be a boon for all cigar smokers and all tobacco stores in Massachusetts, like our own, the one we love so much, Levitt and Pierce. And after the meeting, I went into Cambridge Common and was very, very happy to see a goodly number of people smoking, including myself. And I did see a sign saying that there was a $250 fine. But even though it's not being enforced 100%, of course no law is enforced 100%, a smoker is made to feel less easy in these situations. You know, I wasn't perfectly comfortable. I couldn't walk out openly and smoke in front of a police officer or a, what do you call it, ranger. Well, listen, thank you for watching the smoking section. Hope we get our phones back in order. Jim, thank you for calling. See you next week, 7 p.m. Good night.